The land registry is where essentially all of the land transactions are recorded in the Turks and Caicos Islands. It is in Grand Turk. It holds all of the transfers, the charges, anything to do with property, leases, powers of attorney are all registered at the land registry. If a purchaser is borrowing money here to finance a part of the purchase price, that charge will be registered at the land registry along with the deed, the transfer of land, as we call it, at the same time. So the transfer of land to the buyer will be registered at the land registry, and if there is a charge involved in the transaction, that will be registered as well too. We're not digitized over at the land registry. Everything's still done manually. Registration may take some time. That is important if the purchaser is borrowing money to purchase the property, because at closing, the purchaser will receive the property. So let's say they're purchasing a villa. The purchaser will receive the keys to that villa on the day of closing, but the vendor, the seller, will not receive their money on the day of closing. They have to wait for what we call a 14-day escrow period to expire. And the escrow period is where the funds, the proceeds of sale, stay with the vendor's attorney in trust for 14 days. And then if the purchaser does not receive any confirmation or a notification from the land registry that there's a problem with the registration, that's when, at the end of that 14-day period, that's when the vendor can receive their funds. Complicating that a little bit is if the purchaser is borrowing and is having a charge registered on the property as well, the vendor will receive what we call post-closing interest from the 15th day after registration, because registrations never happen in 14 days. It's just impossible. There's too much going on over there for that to happen. So in most cases, on the 15th day, this post-closing interest on the amount borrowed from the lender, post-closing interest will begin to accrue to the purchaser. So not only is the purchaser going to be paying the proceeds of sale, the sales price to the vendor, they will also have to pay this post-closing interest as well. So it's an additional amount that a purchaser who's borrowing must be aware of. And if they're also borrowing, there are added fees on that as well too. The purchaser will pay a stamp duty on the conveyance. But if they're borrowing and having a charge registered against the property, there are additional fees as well too. They pay a stamp duty of 1% on the borrowed amount. They pay 1% to their lender as an origination fee. And then they pay 1% to the lender's attorneys for preparing the charge to begin with. So purchasers who are borrowing have to be aware of the additional cost, the post-closing interest, and the 3 additional 1% fees. So just in conclusion, a couple of things I may not have mentioned earlier, particularly about the land registry and how important it is in the government itself in terms of ownership and land titles. Government guarantees good title in this country. That's a result of, and again, it's just too long of a story for our purposes here, but back in 1967, there was an adjudication of all the land in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And as a result of that adjudication, government now guarantees good title. So you'll never have to worry about title. This is far different from the jurisdictions that I came from and I used to practice in Canada, where we would have to go to the land registry and we'd have to get into these huge old books and we'd have to search title physically, we'd have to go 40 years back and then 40 years. It's, again, that's a long story too, but the good news here that we have in the Turks is that government guarantees good title. So just wanted to mention that as well too.